So the purpose of this paper is to present an application of a preliminary paper I wrote together with Bob again, that trying to integrate the materiality, as the ESG materiality as defined by SASB to the SDGs. And so linking in this way, and or at least trying to link in this way, financial performance to impact. We are now putting in practice this model and in several ways, and one is the one I'm presenting in this paper. So before I start, and I suppose that everybody knows what are SDGs, but just to be clear for everybody, the SDGs were ratified by the United Nations on September 15, 2015. There are 17 goals divided in 169 targets or sub-goals. And the SDGs have been defined as the closest thing the Earth has to a strategy. And we can discuss about this, but we do not have time. I have a timer here, and so I'm stressed with, and oh, sorry, I didn't start, so I have 2 minutes more. And what is interesting is that companies and investors are increasingly including the SDGs as a framework in their activity, which is our research background. Our research background is essentially built around 3 pillars. The first one is the ESG rating in the mist. Then what we call the ESG rating in the mist, then the SDGs and the private sector, which is the role of the private sector in the SDGs and vice versa. So the relationship between the two, and the concept of ESG materiality. We will see, what we did, we linked all the 3 aspects. So the first point is, we could say that very briefly, and in the paper we go through this point quite deeply. The ESG rating and ranking systems is all over the map. In general, we can observe a very low correlations among different ratings and rankings. So the same company is evaluated in a different way by different raters. And there is a lot of literature about that. In general, the problem, we could identify 6 problems. The first one is a sort of theorization problem. So the definition of the different categories varies among raters. There is no agreement on how to measure a given category, so there is a metric problem. There is a sort of bias problem, which is some evaluation might be biased for country, a geographical effect, an industry effect, and so on. Then there is also a method, so methodological problem, so different weighting and different algorithms that are applied. And there is also a sort of reporting delays. Many of these raters and ranking are based on self-disclosed data by companies, and so there is a lag between, considering the time of disclosure of the information. And many times, because of the opacity of the algorithm, because for proprietary issues, there is a sort of, let's say, unverifiable data problem. So we are in the midst. And there is a huge debate about this. It is not exactly the topic of our research, but we are positioning ourselves within this debate, which is increasingly important given the importance and the increasing importance of ESG investment and sustainability, that's the reason we are here. The other point is the SDGs and the private sector. So the SDGs need the private sector. Why do they need the private sector? They need the need of financing of the SDGs. So the SDGs are beautiful goals, but the question is who pays for the SDGs? So estimation from the UNCTAD says that only 15% of the total amount needed to finance the SDGs can come from the public sector, public funds. So the rest should come from the private sector. So the SDGs need the private sector. Indeed, the SDGs that come after the Millennium Development Goals, one of the main differences between the two goals is that the explicit involvement of the private sector, also the discussion phase in the preliminary phase. So the involvement of the private sector. So the SDGs need the private sector, but also the private sector needs the SDGs. So the SDGs represent what? A sort of wake-up call for the companies. So they represent, even if the SDGs were not created for companies, neither for investors, neither for financial markets, but they represent a wake-up call. They are providing a new risk framework. They are providing, which are the issues that you can read somewhere, which are the issues and risks that make investors awake during the night. And at the same time, they are being called $1 trillion opportunity. Why? Think about the business opportunity you can have if all the targets are met. So there is the link. And the other problem is, okay, how do we measure the contribution of the private sector? So it's a problem of measurement. So impact measures exist, but or they rely on information outside the company, like the SDG index from the Sustainable Development Solution Network, or from inside the company, but they do not provide a measure. It's more a framework to assess the impact, like the ESG reporting of KPMG or total value approach of EY and so on. And finally, the concept of ESG materiality, I will go very, very quickly. We know that there is evidence that ESG materiality is financially relevant. So ESG materially performing well on material ESG issues determine an overperformance in terms of market performance. And this is the graph from the pillar study from Mozaffar Khan, Joe Serafin, and Jan. And then the other part of the materiality, ESG materiality, is the SASB. And sorry for the bit, but this is just to show you the materiality map of SASB. SASB, the Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, is a non-profit organization based in San Francisco that is focused differently from the GRI to identify on industry by industry which are the issues, the sustainability issues that are financially relevant for each industry. So materiality in terms of financial materiality. So we put together these three pillars, so ESG in the midst, and SDG and the private sector, and ESG materiality. So essentially what we did, we linked SDGs to ESGs. We use here ESGs as a plural because of many definitions of ESG. So what happens if you link ESG to SDGs? You start to talk about externalities. This morning during the opening panel, a person asked to Bob, I think, if I'm talking about ESG performance, I'm not talking about the impact, because implicitly ESG doesn't take into account externalities. And so we can take into account externalities using SDGs. So if we link the two components, and what we are trying to do also, we also think that as SDGs and SASB are public, let's say, goods, because they are open, they are available, they are freely available, and using the data from TVL, we can provide some more standardized and transparent information about the impact on ESG. So what we did is we starting from our previous paper, we mapped the SASB issues to the SDGs and to the target, but in our previous paper this mapping was general, so it was the same mapping for all industries, as materiality is industry specific, but also impact, and the link with SDGs is industry specific. We used the SDG 3 in the healthcare sector, SDG 3 and its 9 targets, and adopt an industry-specific approach. So we mapped the SASB's issues linked to the healthcare sector to the targets of the SDGs. And then we used data from TruValue Labs 11-year database from the Russell 3000 included companies in the healthcare sector, US headquartered. So let's set up the framework. So as I said, mixing SASB, SDGs, TVL data, we reached a sort of SDG-linked ESG performance scores. So I will not bother you, in terms of giving you information about numbers and scores for the healthcare sector. You can find in the paper. What I'm going to do is just to put the framework in action here. So what we did when I talk about mapping the SDGs, so this is essentially what we did. So we did more because it's not a goal, but at the target level. So we considered all the targets, indeed not all 169, just 107, but there were enough targets. And of course it is complicated. It is complicated, but it is necessary to do on an industry-specific base. So doing this, we, as I said, this approach, we see which are, especially the E&S externalities, and we will also see which is the potential, let's say, the role of corporate activity when they have financial incentives and what should be done when financial incentives are not present. So we are using SDG 3 as example. So SDG 3 is the SDG linked to well-being, to health. So it is, we think that we thought it was the most appropriate to the healthcare sector. So, and the SDG 3 says, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages, but it is a very ambitious goal. The SDG 3 has 9 targets, and for example, just to give you a snapshot of how a target is, target 3.3 by 2030, and the epidemics of AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and all other communicable disease, or 3.5, which is about the prevention and treatment of substance abuse. So this is the SDG 3 is composed by 9 targets, which is quite diversified, and of course a focus on increase the well-being. So according to our mapping, considering the 30 SASB's categories, parentheses, when we did the analysis, we worked with the provisional SASB standard. At that time, they have 30 general issue categories. Now, from November 2018, we have the codified standards, and we have 26 categories. We adjusted the mapping, and we are working on adjusted version of the mapping. So we were not so happy about this change because we had to do again everything. But anyway, on the basis of the provisional standard, so out of 30 categories, 18 of SASB categories are related to for the healthcare sector, are related to SDG. To the SDG 3, and so example include access and affordability, or water and wastewater management, product quality and safety, and so on. So, which is the asset allocation framework? So, how can this framework be useful for an asset allocation purpose? So here, as I told you, what we did, we did this mapping specifically for the healthcare sector, and then here for the SDG 3. We calculated using our previous paper an index that we called Industry SDG Impact Index, which is given by the ratio between the number of for each industry, the number of material issues of the industry that are linked to the SDG, in this case SDG 3, out of the total number of SASB issues that are linked to the SDG we are working on, so SDG 3. So it is, so the maximum value, the maximum value of this index is 100. So if all the SASB issues that impact that SDGs are material for the industry. It means that a SASB, an index which is lower than 50 implies that the majority of the impact of the industry on that target or on that SDG comes from no material issues and not from material issues at the industry level. And this is what happens for the SDG 3. So we can see that, which is where the light? Oh, no, so, oh, sorry. Okay, you see the line without the pointer. So is it the 50 is the line? So the pharma and biotech and medical equipment has the majority of the impact from the material issues. So it means that there is an alignment between financial incentive and impact. And this not happens for the other industries. So what happens when we have a high impact index? As the impact comes from financially material issues, there is an alignment between financial performance and impact. Otherwise, there is no alignment, and this is the place where public policy or regulators or NGO or in general cooperation must be put in place. So we use this 50 as a threshold, both for ESG performance, because according to TruValue Labs scoring methodology, a score higher than 50 means good performance. A score lower than 50 means a bad performance. If I translate into externalities, it means that a company performs well. So with a score higher than 50 has positive externalities and vice versa. A score lower than 50 means negative externalities. So I can do this for the issue level because TruValue Labs provides data and scores for company for each issues of SASB issues. So we had data for all the 30 SASB issues for each company. This has allowed us to, okay, let's move to this other one. This allowed us to do what? To build an asset allocation matrix. So recapping what we have, we can have an industry or a company, whatever it is, we can do the analysis at the industry level, at the company level, that can have a higher material ESG performance and a low or high-low at ESG, material ESG performance, high-low impact on the SDG, where 50 is the threshold between high and low because of for the reason I said before. So what we have here, so we built this asset allocation matrix. So we can have in the A square, what we have is a low companies. Low companies are companies that are bad performance in terms of ESG material issues, and so negative externalities, working in industries with a low impact. So either I am an ESG investor, either I care about impact, I do not consider these companies. Or companies with high material ESG performance in industry with low SDG impact. So in this case, incentives are not aligned. Incentives are not aligned. So in this case, the impact derives mainly from no material ESG issues, and it is, okay, I finished my time, but I can, give me 5 minutes more. Is it okay for you? 2 minutes? Okay, thank you. And so this is an arena for policy policy intervention or for cooperation. Then where we have it is interesting. It is the high impact, low ESG. This is an area where where investors could engage with companies in trying to improve the ESG performance. This is an area for engagement, and of course, the high. It is the best. It is the best situation in terms of asset allocation. And what we can do is, using this framework, we can do at a goal level, at a target level, at a company level, and industry level. So this is a very powerful, we think, it is a very powerful tool. So the framework in action. What we did is to calculate ESG material scores considering only those issues that are linked to each target of the SDG 3. So it is a pure material score. Let's take the target 3.2 and 3.3 as example in the healthcare sector for the medical equipment industry. What we see for these targets, the ESG material score, are considered at the target level, material at the target level. So it means that this is calculated using only the score of the issues that are relevant to that target for the industry. We have a situation where with an average score of 60.7, with a maximum score of 88, and a minimum of 37.2. Let's consider these two companies. And the medical equipment industry has an impact index on the target, so the ratio between the material issues for the company, for the industry impacting the target over all the SASB issues impacting the target of 66.67. So the impact from this industry comes from financially material issues. So there is a financial incentive to do that. So in this case, we have the company with a score equal to the maximum is a company that in our asset allocation matrix is in D point, is high. Whereas the company with the minimum score, the company A or B, is the company in the C square. So it is low ESG performance, high impact. So this is a situation where engagement with the company is, if I look only at the ESG adjusted target score, and I look at a target 3.3, the ESG performance, material performance at the target level is higher in that case, in this industry, but the impact is lower. So in this case, I will have companies minimum and maximum in the other quadrants. So investors can decide which is the best asset allocation, the strategy they can use, and which is the best portfolio strategy they can use according to their goal. But at the same time, this approach is useful also at the company level. When we talk about SDG alignment, increasingly companies are talking about SDG alignment, but many times there is no coherence. It is SDGs, there are surveys about that. SDGs is a sort of sometimes cherry picking, or they simply translate in the language of SDGs things that the companies are already doing. But not always there is awareness about the concept of materiality, and if you look at the materiality map, the materiality heat map of companies, they present in their sustainability reports, and when they talk about SDGs, very few companies, so I do not have statistical evidence, so I cannot give you which is the proportion, but just as a random analysis, very few companies have a conscious and explicit alignment between the two. So very quickly, we think that linking SASB and SDGs as a public good, we call it public good, with transparent data, we can partially solve the problem of ESG in the midst. Which are the limitations of this approach? The limitation of this approach are many limitations. First of all, we're using a binary approach in terms of impact and in terms of materiality. It is impact, yes, no. It is no how much a company might be the impact. And material, yes, no. Indeed, we know that, according to SASB, that some issues are the more material, more financially relevant for some industries than for others when they are material. Another limitation is that we didn't divide targets between, let's say, internally actionable by companies or externally, as sometimes in literature has been done. So we implicitly assume that all targets are internally actionable by companies. Stop. I'm finished. Thank you.